Yo, what's up, chefs? It's Vinny. Long time no see. I've missed every last one of you beautiful and lovely people, but today we have some good news, and that is because GGG has finally blessed us with an official update for POE 2. More specifically, it's a content update timeline. Within it, this is going to include the specific official release date for 0.3, and also some speculative or like a rough estimate for the release date of 0.4 as well. So, starting things off, according to GGG, we can expect 0.3 to come out on August 29th, which is a little bit later in the month than they would have liked, but this is supposed to be a very big update. Of course, with an update like this comes a new league, which means fresh combat mechanics, rewards, new systems, crafting options, bosses, the list goes on, and of course, you're going to get to experience all of this within a fresh economy, which is very important. In addition to that, they've also given us a speculative time frame on when we can expect a 0.4, which according to them should be in December, which makes a lot of sense because that is following their traditional 4-month timeline of releases. Now, unfortunately, GGG has yet to give us any concrete examples of the content we can expect coming in 0.3. All they really left us with is that they will be announcing the content of the release about 1 week prior to August 29th. So of course, I'll be making sure to cover that when it comes out, potentially even live streaming it. With that being said, I do have some predictions of my own for things that we should expect in 0.3 based on all of the information we've gotten thus far. Starting things off, of course, I'm expecting the Druid. I think if GGG in specific wants to meet anywhere close to their original timeline of POE 2 and when we should expect it to fully release, I think we have to see at least one new class in this season, and in addition to that, I would also expect some new ascendancies for the base classes as well. So of course, we already got a new ascendancy for the Witch in 0.2, we also got a new ascendancy for the Warrior in 0.2, and then we obviously got the Huntress plus 2 of her ascendancies as well. So I'm expecting at least 2 more, probably for the original base classes, but I certainly would not be surprised and would kind of expect that we see more than 2. Like I said, if we can expect GGG to stay close to their original timeline, we should probably be seeing more than 2 ascendancies. As for the new ascendancies, I'm really anticipating we should see at least one for the Ranger, Monk, and Sorceress. Whether or not we'll see another one for the Huntress is much more up in the air though. In regards to what they're going to be specifically, I'd say everyone can take their best guess here. When it comes to the Sorceress, I would really like to see something that's kind of based around fire. Maybe that's a bit cliche, and we do already have the Elementalist, but it just happens to be the case that pretty much every Elementalist build so far has revolved around lightning, or like spark and some sort of lightning theme. And we do have the Infernalist for the Witch, but I feel like there's kind of a lack right now of like a big fire mage archetype in the game, so I think that would be pretty cool. In regards to the Monk, obviously, we already have the Invoker, which is kind of similar to the Elementalist in the sense that it's supposed to be all of the elements. Of course, similar boat here, we've really only seen lightning and ice. We haven't seen like much of a fire build for a monk, really, as far as I'm concerned, or at least not any that were significantly popular. Of course, we also already have the Acolyte of Cholula, which clearly covers the whole dark side monk class fantasy. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see something that kind of revolves around wind, because we already have a lot of wind-based attacks and abilities, but unfortunately there's just no clear path to scale this into the end game as far as I'm aware. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we see, or I would say it's a strong contender, maybe like a Cloud Surfer or Acolyte of the Wind for something simple. And in regards to the Ranger, I don't really have much of a preference here. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like a hybrid melee ranged ascendancy. However, since we did just get the Huntress, that might feel a bit off or a bit weird, getting those kind of hybrid melee ranged archetypes back to back, but I'm just not sure what else they'd really plan to do here. Maybe like a Beastmaster or something like that, but I'm sure Druid will have an ascendancy revolving around that. So honestly, this is one where I really don't have much of a guess. And then finally, for the Huntress, like I said, I'd say it's pretty unlikely that we see the 3rd ascendancy for the Huntress in 0.3, but if we do, I'm kind of hoping for something that maybe revolves around using like a 2-hand spear, more of like a pike instead of the spear shield setup. I think that could be kind of cool, but I'd say the options here are pretty limitless, and I'm more or less just excited to see what GGG cooks up for the Huntress themselves. Moving back to do a little bit of speculation on the Druid, and I would say it's pretty safe to assume that two of the ascendancies here are kind of locked in, if you will. One is almost certainly going to revolve around like lightning, tornadoes, earthquakes, being some sort of like a spiritualist caster, if you will. And then I would imagine that the other one that's locked in is going to revolve around shapeshifting. The only thing that I would say I'm kind of curious about is whether or not they're going to try and tie in summoning companions like beasts, wolves, bears, birds, etc. into the shapeshifting ascendancy, or if they're going to make that its own standalone ascendancy. So then you would have sort of a caster druid, which is obviously ranged magic, and then you have a melee, presumably mainly melee shapeshifting druid. You know, think of wolf form, werebear, all that type of stuff. Hopefully we get some really cool forms as well. So that's why I said maybe melee. You never know. Maybe we'll get like a spitting cobra or something that can be sick. But then that third ascendancy for the druid, which I'm sure is way down the line, like I said, this one seems more up in the air to me as to whether or not it'll be a standalone like summoner ascendancy, or if they're going to try to bake that in to the shapeshifting ascendancy, so you're running around as a wolf with a pack of wolves. I could see that being pretty cool as well, so we'll just have to wait and find out. Moving on from new classes and ascendancies though, there is some other stuff that I'm definitely anticipating we should see in 0.3. One of which is actually going to be some updates and improvements to the overall trade system, and hopefully, obviously this is probably just major copium, but hopefully maybe a full trade overhaul is in our future. I would say surely down the line we should expect that. Whether or not we'll see it in 0.3 though is definitely a bit of a different question. However, there was actually a recent interview that GGG did over in China. I don't know all the specifics on it, but what I do know is one of the things they covered in a bit of detail is that they are planning to make major updates to the trade system coming in the future for POE 2. And beyond that, they actually plan to test their new trade systems or their new ideology around trade within POE 2 before they port it back to POE 1. I think that's kind of good news for me, because I would actually, me personally, someone who really only plays POE 2, doesn't play POE 1, I'd much rather get that new system in POE 2 so that way they can, start working on it, fix it, make it better, and then I'll have access to it. And then eventually, once it's all tidied up, they can port that back to POE 1 for everyone that's still playing that game as well. Sounds a bit selfish, but hey, a man's got to eat. I would love to see that new trade system. I've been anticipating it and been very excited for it for a long time. They've actually been talking about a new trade system for quite some while as well, but they've just yet to bring it to fruition, of course. And now, of course, I could go on and on about a lot more of the obvious things we should expect to see coming to the game in 0.3, but my last real unique prediction is going to be purely hopium, so don't get your hopes up, but I'm actually holding out that we might see a target dummy coming to the game in 0.3. Now, of course, GGG has said nothing about this, there's no confirmation, so like I said, don't get your hopes up, and I don't have much of a reason to believe this either, but I will give you the one reason I have, and it's the fact that GGG has been extremely quick and kind of open to make these bigger changes, even on things that they've kind of been on the fence about, so to speak. A good example I can give you is whenever they made the changes for ascendancies back towards the beginning of 0.2, there was this debate about whether or not you should or shouldn't be able to change your ascendancy. GGG had one interview with Zizaran, and very shortly after they made the change. So I wouldn't be surprised, because I know they've been very tentative about putting a target dummy in the game, but they've also been very tentative about making big changes to the trade system. Yet they've now come on another interview, explained that they're probably going to make some big changes to the trade system. So I just wouldn't be surprised if they kept an open mind and brought a target dummy into the game, even if it was a very base level version of it. I'm not a game developer, but I would assume adding in like a very baseline minimalistic target dummy that you can add into your hideout as an option shouldn't be too difficult for them to come up with. And finally, last but not least, I thought I'd bring it to your guys' attention that last Epoch has also released its Season 3 release date, which is slated for August 21st, which is just one short week before Season 3 for POE 2 comes out. Now, of course, I'm not much of a last Epoch player myself. I've played a couple hundred hours of it, and I played it in the most recent release that came out. I had quite a bit of fun, although I had my issues with the game, of course, but I did have fun. with that being said, I will just go ahead and put it out into the universe. You know, maybe the developers will see this video, probably not, but who knows. If they do, I would love to see us get away from this 1 week gap between release dates for PoE 2 and Last Epoch. I know, of course, they are working within their own parameters, and you know, they're going to make their own decisions, and they can't fully base them off the decisions of another game company. But I think all of us can agree that there's only so many good games in the ARPG genre going around at the moment. They're kind of dwindling a little bit, if you ask me. But with that being said, it would definitely be nice to see the release dates of 2 of the big hitters to not be so close to one another. Feel free to let me know down in the comments. You guys have any ideas for maybe how they could do this, when they should do this, why they should or shouldn't do this. But if you ask me, I think it would definitely be a really good decision for the genre as a whole. Maybe not for each individual company. Maybe they like releasing next to each other because they can kind of stomp out the competition perhaps, or maybe that's their goal. Really can't say for sure. But I think for the genre as a whole, especially given the state of Diablo 4 right now, it'd be really nice if PoE 2 and Last Epoch weren't right next to each other on release dates. With all of that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the update. Like I said, I missed all of you. I'm very excited to come back to PoE 2 in 0.3. This little break I've had, I think, has been really good for me. I could definitely have seen myself getting extremely burnt out on the game if I just tried to play it all the way from the beginning of 0.2 to the beginning of 0.3 and then so on and so forth. So I think this has definitely been good for me. For any of you that are interested, the new season of Marvel Rivals just came out, and I do have a second and third YouTube channel now. One of them is primarily for Marvel Rivals, one of them is primarily for Hearthstone Battlegrounds, but I intend to upgrade or upload some additional content on these channels as well. For example, other games like Peak or maybe horror games, stuff like that. So if you're interested, I'll leave those channels linked down below in the description. Make sure to come check them out. I've already uploaded or started uploading videos for Hearthstone. I've got Marvel videos, Marvel Rival videos very soon coming on the way. So like I said, if you're interested or you just want to come support me, make sure to check those out. Other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hopefully it'll be before 0.3, but at the very latest, I'll be seeing you guys 1 week before 0.3 for the official announcement of all of the new content that we're going to be seeing. Later, chefs. And last but not least, take it easy, chefs.
Fade away.